Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in the state of New York in 1981, now celebrating our 41st year. Today is Wednesday, November 16, 2022 in the Gregorian calendar, and the 23rd day of the 8th Hebrew Israelite month of Cheshvan in the Hebrew Israelite calendar. Welcome to episode 33 of our weekly Root and Branch Association Torah Fellowship seminars, chaired by Fellowship Chairman Rabbi Hanania Weitzman. I say it each week and I will continue to repeat it, a giant of our time, one of the few real rabbis who stood up to the Erev rabble of the last 2 years and came out knight in shining armor. There's a few others, but they're not that many. And he earned the right to speak about Torah, and we shall continue to do so as long as we are able. And now without the Rabbi Weiss Mandel of our time, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to Hanania, whose mother is in the audience. Remember, your mother's listening. You got to do it extra good. All right, Hanania, it's all you.
Thank you very much. Hello, welcome everybody. Speaking of knights in shining armor, that's a new one to add to my roster there. So we're going to talk about the Shidduch world tonight, based on the parsha. This is a shiur that I've given in the past, so I have a handy dandy source sheet because it's always better to look inside. And for your convenience, I put two links in the chat box where you can download or view on the screen the same source sheet that I'm looking at. If you're able to read the Hebrew, I strongly urge you to do so because you'll learn much better that way. One is a JPEG, one is a PDF, whichever is easier for you. You just have to maximize it so the letters will be clear because it's a little bit small when you first click on it. Just make it larger a little bit and you'll be able to see what I'm seeing. So this week's parsha, a lot of people talk about the Shidduch world because we have the classic story of Eliezer finding a wife for Yitzchak, and unfortunately, many people use that as the evidence that this is the Torah way for there to be a shadchan, a matchmaker in the middle. That's a Torah way. Eliezer served the function of the shadchan. He was the matchmaker, found a wife for Yitzchak, and that's why things are done the way it is today. Very primitive way of looking at the story, very primitive way of thinking. And the fact is, of all the many people who met and married throughout the course of the Torah, the stories that we know of people meeting, this is the only one where there was a third party actually making a match. All the other people met naturally, they met on their own. So if you really want to be honest, then you could say at the very most, this is one possible way of people meeting, but there are many other Torah approved ways for people to meet, and there's no reason to throw out any of them, especially when we're living in a time when it's very difficult for singles to meet and marry. Why are we throwing out any options that are acceptable according to the Torah? But let's go a little deeper into the story, and we'll see that this is not even a good proof for the existence or the usage of matchmakers. Now, there is certainly room for third parties to help singles meet and marry, and they can get paid for their services. There's nothing wrong with that. However, that has very little to do with the story of Eliezer, as we shall see. So if you're following along the source sheet, look at source number 1. This is from Bereshis Rabbah, Siman Samach Os Gimel, and it reads as follows: Dalad Hein Shetavu Shelo Ki Hogan. There were 4 people who davened to Hashem or made a request of Hashem in a way that was not proper. Legimel Nitin Kahogan. Nevertheless, 3 of them, Hashem answered them properly, meaning they made a request of Hashem that was somewhat out of bounds. They didn't phrase their request in the proper way, and even so, Hashem answered their request, gave them what they were looking for. However, one of them, unfortunately, was trapped by his own words, and Hashem did not answer him the way he was hoping, but trapped him with his own words. These are the 4 people. Eliezer Eved Avraham, as we'll talk about momentarily. Eliezer, the servant of Avraham. Kalev, Shaul, and Yiftach. So we're not going to go into the other 3. If you know a little bit of a Tanakh, then you'll readily know what we're talking about. But we're going to talk now about Eliezer. So the Medrash continues. Eliezer said, he davened to Hashem and he said, Hashem, I need you to help me find a girl for Yitzchak, and I'm going to give her a test, and let it be that if she passes the test, then that will be the one that you have chosen. Okay, so Chazal are now critical of this. Ilu yatsa Ama achas v'hishgaso hayamasiya leben adono asmaha. Let's say a nice girl who happened to be a maidservant came out and gave him some water. Would she have married her off to the son of his master if she didn't come from a proper family, but she happened to be a nice person? So merely by passing that test does not make her qualified to marry Yitzchak. He was putting himself in great danger by making this test, because a person could have very easily passed this test who wasn't suitable. Nevertheless, Hashem arranged everything for him properly. As it says, Hashem arranged that Rivka would be the one that came out immediately, and she passed the test. So we see right off the bat a strong message from Chazal: don't try this at home, kids. Right? Eliezer was a big tzaddik. Avram and Yitzchak were also very righteous people. So Hashem arranged it that even though the tefillah wasn't bulletproof, I mean, he could have been trapped by his own words, because everybody involved was very righteous. Hashem arranged for a positive outcome. But don't try this at home. So we learn from here that this story in the Torah is not instructing us to follow everything that Eliezer did in our own lives. It worked for him. Maybe it was the right thing for him to do, but don't try the same thing that he did. We're going to learn other lessons from the story, but it's a very clear message. Eliezer is not a model to follow for all people. Okay, so that immediately throws this out as evidence that the Shidduch system, the matchmaking system, can be based on this story, because Chazal tell us very clearly, don't try the same things that he tried, because you can't expect things to work out. Let's go to source number 2. This is a different tack. The Yitzchak ba mi yabo. So after the story happened with Eliezer and Rivka, and they were now coming back. So Yitzchak was coming back from where he was. So it says, Asa misa. He came back from death, right? From the Akedah, where he was in danger of being killed. Where did he go? Be'er lachai roi. To the well that was called Be'er lachai roi. Halach lahavi as Hagar. He went to bring Hagar. Now this is very important, because people believe very strangely that Yitzchak was not capable of finding his own wife. I mean, a lot of like the so-called modern Orthodox Jews who think they're smarter than Chazal, or they can analyze the Torah like they're reading Shakespeare and find all kind of inferences, and they think they're master psychologists, and all the foibles and modern psychological problems that people have today, they try to transpose on the greatest people who ever lived. So they say Yitzchak was a shlump. He couldn't find his own wife, and he needed help. So Chazal say very clearly just the opposite. He went to bring Hagar, and I have in brackets over here the commentary of Rashi. La Avram aviv sheyisa enad. He went to bring Hagar back to Avraham that he should remarry her. After Sarah died, Avram was now single again. And it's not good for a man to be alone without a wife, even if he's previously been married and have children. A man should always be married. So Yitzchak went out to be the shadchan for Avraham. So clearly, he was a very capable man. He was capable of finding a shidduch for his own father. He was certainly capable of finding a shidduch for himself. But it so happened that he had the status of a karban ola, since he was brought up as a karban, even though he wasn't, burned alive as a karban, but he was offered as a karban to Hashem. So therefore, he had an extra level of holiness, and he was not allowed to leave Israel. So it was a practical thing. Eliezer needed to do a job for Yitzchak because he had to venture outside of Israel to find Rivka. Yitzchak was not allowed to leave Israel. So for a practical matter, Avraham sent Eliezer, but Yitzchak was fully capable of finding his own wife. And had it not been for this practical issue, he may have gone on the journey himself. So again, this also weakens. This is evidence that you need a matchmaker. Yitzchak needed a matchmaker. Clearly, it's not so. And in fact, while Avraham was trying to find the wife for Yitzchak, Yitzchak was returning the favor for his own father. Let's go to source number 3, also from the Bereshis Rabbah. This is Siman Samach, again, letter 8, Osches. Amar Rabbi Acha. Rabbi Acha said, Yafes hichasan shel avdei batei avos mitarasan shel banim. The chatter, the conversations of the servants of our forefathers' homes is greater, is more precious than the Torah of the children. Very fascinating comment. Why? Parshaso shel Eliezer shnayim v'gimel dapim hu omra v'shona. The whole story of Eliezer is written 2 and 3 columns in the Torah, because first we have the story as it actually happened. Eliezer davening to Hashem and then meeting Rivka. And then when he meets the family, he recounts the entire story about how Abraham sent him and the prayer that he said to Hashem and how everything happened after he met Rivka. So the whole story is repeated when it simply could have said Eliezer told the family of Rivka everything that had happened. And I already know everything that happened because I just read it in the previous page of the Torah. So the Torah repeats the story, which takes up 2 or 3 columns in the Torah. Visheretz migufe Torah, the laws of insects, is one of the main bodies of Jewish law. Purity and impurity is very, very important. It can even have capital ramifications to it. If a person's not allowed to go into the base mikdash when he has certain types of tumah or eat from a carbon, it's a very serious thing to be tar or tameh. The ein damo mitame kivisaro ella miribui hamikra, and we only know it gives one example of countless laws that we only know that the blood of a sheretz does not cause tumah, does not cause spiritual impurity like the flesh of a sheretz. We only know this law because the Torah says an extra letter, an extra word. It merely hints at the law. Hashem couldn't spare us a few extra words to teach us a very, very important law. And there's many examples of Jewish laws that we argue about that aren't clearly spelled out in the Torah, and Chazal had to figure it out and find hints in the Torah, an extra letter here, an extra word there, it used this word instead of that word, the many different ways that we darshan the Torah. Hashem was very stingy with the words that he used, and yet when it comes to Eliezer talking, Hashem has plenty of room to tell us the whole story. It's almost like Rabbi Achaz is making this plaintive comment that we have to work so hard to figure out all the details of the Torah and the Jewish law. And when Hashem used all of this space, couldn't he spare a few extra words to teach us things a little bit more clearly? So this is actually a very good question. On the one hand, he's telling us a point that the talk of Eliezer, the servant of Avram, is very precious to Hashem. Now, first of all, these people lived a very, very long time, right? We only see very short snapshots of their lives. Avram lived 175 years. So we know a few major events of his life that are clearly spelled out in the Torah. We know other events from his life that the Chazal tell us that we know through tradition, but there's a lot of things that they said in the course of their lives, a lot of things that they did that I'm sure are very interesting and worth knowing, but the Torah does not record it for all time. So if it's going to choose to make this point that even the idle talk of a servant of the house of Avram is very precious to us, why dafka this? There's many other things that Eliezer said in the course of his life. Why did the Torah choose this to make this point? And once it's making the point, why did it have to tell the whole story over again and take up 2 or 3 pages? It could have made the point in a much shorter form. Okay, so this medrash is making a nice statement, but it really raises more questions than answers. What is it really teaching us? So hold that thought in your mind. We're going to get back to that in a few sources. We'll go to source number 4 now, also from the Bereshis Rabbah. This is from Siman Nun Zayin Os Gimel 57, letter 3, or number 3. Vayhi acharei hadivarim oela. So the parsha of Eliezer finding a wife for Yitzchak begins. It says it was after these things. So what are these things that the Torah is talking about? Achar hirhure devarem shayisham, after the thoughts that had happened there. Mi mehar, who was thinking to himself? Avram hirher. Avram was thinking to himself. Amar, he said, Ilu meis bahar hamoria. If Yitzchak had died on Har Hamoria, it was a very close call. Avram had the knife raised, ready to kill him. Right, so it was a very close call. Lo haya meis b'lo banim, wouldn't he have died without having children? Right, and then that would have been the end of Jewish history right there. Achshav ma'aseh. So now, what shall I do? Asienu mibenos oner eshkol mamre shehein tzidkanios. Avram said, I better get him married. He's already a grown man. He doesn't have any children, right? We have to get the ball started with building the Jewish people. So I better find him a wife. So he said, oh, I have good neighbors, right? I'll marry him off to one of the daughters of Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre that are righteous people. What do I care about yichus? What do I care about family lineage? It's not, Avram said, lineage is not the most important thing. Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre don't have the right lineage. They don't come from the family of Abraham. They come from families of idolaters that were never close to Hashem, and they kind of became close to Avram after the fact. Essentially, they were similar to converts, but they weren't from Avram's family. Avram said, so what? They don't have the best family background, but they are righteous people. The daughters are righteous people. I'll pick out a nice girl for Yitzchak from them. That was what Avram said. Amar la Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said to Avram, Einat tzarach, you don't need to do this. Kvar nolad zugo shel Yitzchak. The match, the zivug of Yitzchak has already been born. As it says, Hina Yolda Milka Gamhi, at the end of last week's parsha, behold, Milka has also given birth, and Rivka came from Avram's family. So Hashem sent Avram a hint that he should search from his own family to find a wife for Yitzchak. Now, I bring this source in because today, yichus is treated as one of the most, in some circles, the most important factor in choosing who marries whom, or at least who's fixed up with whom. And this is completely against the Torah. Now, yichus is on the list of things to look for. It is important. A person's family background and lineage is definitely important. But even Avram Avinu himself, when he was now building the Jewish people, finding a wife for Yitzchak, he said, what do I care about yichus? I need to find a righteous woman to marry Yitzchak. That was the most important thing. Now, yichus is certainly important, and it's a bonus if you're able to find it. But the most important thing is to find the righteous person. So all the Jews today that make the family background the most important thing, they do FBI-like investigations of the family. If they find one black sheep in the family or somebody who's not exactly their speed of kosher, etc., then they passel the Shidduch. This is totally wrong. And here you have a very clear Torah source. And even Avram Avinu himself said these exact words. What do I care about yichus? So if it's good enough for Avram to find somebody who's righteous, who doesn't have the best family background, which isn't their fault, we don't choose what family we're born into, then we certainly shouldn't try to be better than Avram. Okay, the next three sources are all tied together. This is the deal that Avram made with Eliezer. He said, try to find a wife from my family. And then Eliezer said, what if the girl doesn't want to go back with me? Because it's a very hard sell. You have this strange man coming from a distant land saying, I want you to come back with me and marry some man that maybe you've heard about, but you've never seen and you don't know. And you're already going to be married to him by the time you lay eyes on him. Because Eliezer wasn't merely a matchmaker. He was making an arranged match, which by the way, is yet another reason why we can't compare what Eliezer did to the Shidduch world of today with the matchmakers, because that was actually an arranged marriage. Today, we don't do arranged marriages. Maybe in very, very limited circles, it still goes on. In Europe, maybe it was more common, but today, by and large, we don't do this anymore. We don't make arranged marriages. We simply help people to meet and go out on their own. And after that, it's up to them. But the first time that Rivka laid eyes on Yitzchak, she was already married to him. Eliezer was the shliach. He was sent as an agent of Yitzchak to actually marry the girl on his behalf. So anyway, so Eliezer said, what if I find what seems like the right girl and she doesn't want to go back with me? Which is a very logical problem that might have happened. So Avram said, V'nikisa mishvuasi, then you are innocent, you are clean of this oath, just come back home and you don't have to worry about it anymore, and then we'll figure out plan B. So what is plan B? So here Rashi says, V'kachlo isha mibenos honor eshkol mamre. So here, very simply, Rashi is probably basing it on the source that we just saw, that Avram is falling back on his original thought that if somebody from my family doesn't want to come back with Eliezer to marry Yitzchak, no problem. I'll just go back now to honor Eshkol and Mamre and find a girl from there, because that was always on the table for Avraham. The Das Zikanim, which is a pirush written by the Bali Tosfos, some of whom were actual descendants of Rashi, they argue with him here. And they take a different approach. V'nikisa mishavuasi zos, this is source number 6. Zos, this, that you will be clean of this oath that you made, mashma miyat. Zos means this and not something else. It's limiting something. So what is it limiting? Lomar, to teach you the mishavua dechi el arti ve'al molati telechti naki, that you're not going to be totally free and clear, talking about Eliezer, from every aspect of the oath, but only from part of it. From the part of the oath that says that you must go to my land and my birthplace, that part you are free and clear. If the girl doesn't want to go back with you, fine, you are now clear from that part of the oath. Avo mishavua lo sikach isha livini lo sinaki. But there was a second part of the oath, and that was that you're not going to take a wife for my son from the daughters of Canaan, and under no circumstances will you do that. Even if Plan A doesn't work, and we now have a very limited pool of people to choose from, nevertheless, you can absolutely not marry marry off my son to a daughter from the 7 nations of the land of Canaan. Well, and according to this, we are forced to say the Bali Tosfos, the honor Eshkul Mamre Lav Ke Na'anim Hayu. Since we have a clear source that says that they were Avram's plan B, it must be that even though they were living in the land of Canaan, they themselves were not part of the nation of Canaan. They were also foreigners like Avraham was, and therefore their daughters, even though they still didn't have the best family background, they didn't have the best yichus, they were still plan B, but they were still not out of bounds if plan A didn't work. The Ramban, however, argues with both Rashi and the Bali Tosfos, and he says as follows, this is source number 7. Lo hirsha also lokachas isha mi benos Canaan, right? Under no circumstances did Avram allow Eliezer to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. On that, so far he agrees. Aval sheyehu pater. So what was plan B if the girl from Avram's family didn't want to go back with Eliezer? That Eliezer is totally free and clear. He's now pater. He doesn't have to find a wife for Yitzchak anymore. He has done his job to the best of his ability. It didn't work out, but he is not to blame for that. And now he's pater. For Hashem hatov be'enav yasa. Now Hashem will do whatever is good in his eyes. Basically, according to the Ramban, Avram said to Eliezer, this is what I want you to do. Hashem should be with you. If it doesn't work out, then we are absolved, and now Hashem has to solve this problem on his own. There wasn't a plan B. The plan B essentially was leave it to Hashem, we're stepping back. Now, between Rashi and the Ramban, we're going to finish the source in a moment, but I want to just bring it to your attention. This is a very important philosophical point that the Ramban is making, and it's different than the philosophical point that Rashi is making. Rashi says, try your very best to get everything that's on the list, right? That she should be righteous, she should be suitable for Yitzchak, and also have the good family background. Try to get everything on your shopping list. If you and all of these things are worthy of being on the shopping list. Today, singles have a shopping list that is filled up with things that are nonsense, that are not really important. But Avram had a very small shopping list, but everything on that list was a deal breaker, was very, very important. However, some things were less deal breakers than others. Some things are more flexible. So he said to Eliezer, try to get a daughter, try to get a girl who has everything on the list. And if you can't, then we'll go to plan B and find somebody who has the most essential things on the list, meaning that she is from a righteous family. She's a righteous girl. And she's at least not from the daughters of Canaan. She's not from the worst of the worst in terms of background. Even though she doesn't have the right background, and certainly not the best background, it's good enough as a plan B. So this is a very important message in terms of the Shidduch world, that it's okay to have deal breakers on your list. All of the things should be worthy of being on the list. It's certainly fine to search for everything that you're looking for. But if you can't find it, at some point, you have to pare that list down to the essentials. Now, matchmakers today, and many people that give musar to singles, and they talk down to them, they basically urge them to throw out the entire list, and even to marry the exact opposite of what they're looking for. I often say that if you want to go to a shadchan and find what you're looking for, ask the shadchan to fix you up with the exact opposite of what you're looking for, and then they'll try to talk you into what you really want. For example, if you want a girl who only wants to live in Israel, tell her that you want a Satmar girl. Seriously, ask for the exact opposite, because they tend to find you the exact opposite. But that's not the message of the Torah. The message of the Torah is that you should have a list of very important things, and if necessary, you pair off the things that are not really essential, but don't give up on everything. You have to have some deal breakers. What's really important to you, you should never give up on that. The Ramban is making a different point, and I don't think in this sense he's arguing with Rashi. He's simply making a different point. We'll see where he argues with Rashi in a moment. The Ramban is saying, make a really strong effort to get married. Sending Eliezer to a distant land to try to talk a woman to come back with him and marry Yitzchak is really putting in a very strong effort. They tried really hard, and they were trying to do things the right way. But if it doesn't work, don't go crazy. At some point, you say, look, I've done everything that could be expected of me to do, and now I leave it up to Hashem, right? You have to put a certain measure of trust in Hashem. People today, they pay lip service to the idea of trusting in Hashem, and not only when it comes to the Shidduch world, but really in all aspects of life, they pay lip service to the idea of trusting in God. But when push comes to shove, they're always trying to force the issue. They're acting as if God doesn't exist, as if God is not going to do anything to help them. You have to know the limits of your effort, the limits of what is expected of you to do, and then leave room for God to do what he's expected to do. You don't have to solve all the problems. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to push and push and push and do things that are harmful to you. Do a reasonable amount, do what's normal, rational, reasonable, and healthy, and then step back and leave the rest to God. That's a very important philosophical message that the Ramban makes over here with 4 simple words. V'Hashem hatov beinav ya aseh. If it doesn't work out, then fine, you are pater, and Hashem will do what is right in his eyes. Now he argues with Rashi. Rashi Kasav, Rashi writes, V'kachlo isha mibenos honor eshkol u mamre. So Rashi's plan B was not the same as the Ramban. According to Rashi, plan B was to marry a girl from the families of honor eshkol and mamre. If they were from the nation of Canaan, God forbid that Avram should take a wife from them. As nice as they may have been, they were allies of Avram. They seemed to be good, decent people. How could Avram even entertain the idea of taking a girl from them? The Ramban argues with the Bali Tosfos and with Rashi and says, in truth, they did actually come from the seed of Canaan. Shakasav Omer, because the pasuk says, Mamre hu Amori achi eshkol va'achi aner. Mamre from the Amori. Amori was one of the nations of Canaan, the brother of Eshkol and the brother of Aner. So this was one big family, and we have a clear Torah source that indicates that they did in fact come from Canaan. Ubibrachis Rabbah Amru, and in Brachis Rabbah Simin Nun Tes Osches Amru, they said Asher lo sigach isha v'gomer, that he told Eliezer not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, and the Medrash expands on that. His Hebrew bibenos Canaan, Avram warned Eliezer against taking a woman from the daughters of Canaan, Oner Eshkol Mamre. So here this Medrash explicitly says that Avram warned Eliezer not to take a daughter from not to take a girl from the families of Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre. This Medrash argues with the previous Medrash, so it's unclear if Oner, Eshkol, and Mamre were in fact from Canaan or not. According to the Ramban, the source that he sees as the most reliable sources, he says that they were in fact from the daughters of Canaan, and therefore there was no plan B. They were not options. According to a different source that Rashi uses, he says that they were in fact not from the daughters of Canaan, and in fact possibly, according to Rashi, even if they were, it's not clear, but possibly that they would have still been possible candidates if things didn't work out. It's a very interesting argument between Rashi, the Bali Tosfos, and the Ramban. Okay, so now let's get back to source number 3, where we had Rabbi Acha saying that that the seemingly idle conversations of the servants of the house of the fathers, of our forefathers, is more precious than the Torah of the children, because the Torah had a lot of room to tell over the story of Eliezer twice, as it happened, and as he was retelling it to the family of Rivka. And yet, when it comes to very basic Jewish laws and very important Jewish laws, the Torah is very sparing and sparse with its words. So what's this Medrash really teaching us? So I want to skip ahead to source number 10 and 11. I did a little out of order. Then we'll go back to 8 and 9. In the source sheet, if you're looking at it, I gave the psukim in the order in which they appear. But in terms of teaching the material, I think it's better to do sources 10 and 11 first. So let's go here. Verse 10, source number 10 has verse 15, pasuk tes vav. This is the story as it actually happened. And then we're going to compare that with pasuk mem hey, verse 45, which is Eliezer retelling the story. So pasuk tes vav is the story as it happens, and it goes as follows. Vayihu terem kila lidaber, and it was before Eliezer even finished speaking, right? He was davening to Hashem, that Hashem should help him and that he's going to do this test. So before he even finished davening to Hashem, V'hine Rivka Yotzeis, and behold, Rivka was now coming out. Asher Yulda liv Suen ben Milka, she was born to Besuel, the son of Milka. Ashes Nachar Achi Avraham, the wife of Nachar, the brother of Avram. So she was perfect candidate, the best possible. Yichus v'chada al shechma, and she was carrying her pitcher on her shoulder. She was going out to draw water. So before Eliezer even finished davening, Hashem was already setting things in motion, had already now sent out the future wife of Yitzchak. Now, when Eliezer is retelling the events as they happen to the family, he says as follows. Ani terem achale ledaber el libi. I had not yet finished speaking to my heart. Now, when Eliezer was davening to Hashem, He was not speaking to his heart, which means thinking to himself. He was davening out loud like we normally do. Now, you can, to a certain extent, daven to Hashem in your thoughts. Obviously, it's not ideal, but you can think to Hashem in your thoughts, and that can be a prayer. Hashem hears our thoughts. But generally speaking, we are supposed to speak to Hashem. So Eliezer did in fact speak to Hashem. And yet when he was retelling the story, he says, I had not yet finished speaking to my heart. In other words, thinking to myself. Behold, Rivka was coming out. She had her pitcher on her shoulder and so on. The story continues. So he deviates in his retelling of the story from what actually happened. The Or HaChaim explains why. Ledaber El Libi. Sholal kilo shamato ozen lochosh lenara shetase letzad mashashama. He purposely changed the story a little bit so the family shouldn't catch him and say, you know why she passed the test? Because she was walking by and she heard you. She heard you davening. She heard what the test was. So of course she passed the test. So Eliezer was trying to sell the idea to the family to send the daughter back with this strange man to marry, a different strange man that at most they may have heard of, but it's a very big ask to make of them. He had to earn their trust. And he was saying, Hashem ordained for Rivka to come back with me and marry the son of my master. He had to win them over that this really came from Hashem. So it had to be a bulletproof case. If he's saying, I was davening out loud and I said that this is a test, and what do you know? Rivka was walking by and she passed the test. They would have caught him and said, this is a bunch of nonsense. She didn't pass any test. God didn't arrange this match. The whole test was flawed, and therefore we're not sending her back with you. And the whole thing would have been torpedoed. So therefore, when he told the story over, he changed a little detail. He knew that Rivka didn't overhear him. She wasn't walking right next to him, but he didn't want to give them an opportunity to catch him, and therefore he changed the wording of the story. Let's see a similar example of this in source number 11. So Pasuk Chaf Beis and Chaf Gimel are the story as it happened, verses 22 and 23. Vahi kasher kilu hagamalim lishtos, and it was when his camels had finished drinking, because Rivka didn't only give water to Eliezer, but also gave water to his animals. Vayikachu ish nezem zahav beka mishkalo ushnei tzmidim al yedei asara zahav kalam. So at that point, Eliezer was 100% certain that this was the right match. So before he even asked her who she was, he took out the jewelry, right? The bracelets and the rings that were heavy in gold, and he gave it to her. Vayomer, and he said to her, Basmi at, whose daughter are you? Hagidi nali, tell me now. Hayesh beisavich makom lanu lalin. Is there room in your father's house for us to sleep over? So that's how the story happened, that she passed the test, and then he took out the jewelry, and then he asked her who she was. But when he retells the story, once again, he changes some of the details. Pasuk Mem Zayin, Vo'esh alosa, this is him talking to the family, and I asked her, Va'omar, and I said, Basmi at, who are you? Whose daughter are you? Va'tomer, and she said, Bas Besuel ben Nachar, asher yodalo Milka, I am the daughter of Besuel, the son of Nachar, who Milka gave birth to. Va'asim hanezem alapav atzmidim aida. And then Eliezer continues, said, after I heard who she was, then I gave her the jewelry. I placed the ring on her face and her nose, and the bracelets on her hands. So Rashi explains, Voesh al va'asim shina haseder. Eliezer changed the order in retelling the story from what actually happened. Why? Because what actually happened was, first he gave her the jewelry, and only then did he ask her who she was. But they shouldn't catch him with his words. The Yomru, and they will say, how do you give jewelry to a strange girl? You don't even know who she is. Maybe she's nice. She did a favor for you. Maybe she showed some very good character. How do you go give jewelry to a strange girl? You don't even know her name or what family she comes from. It's a crazy thing to do. And again, they would have caught him on his words and says, you're a creepy guy. You're a strange guy. I'm not going to trust you to take my daughter back to some distant land and marry some man. You're a creepy guy. So Eliezer changed some of the details so they couldn't catch him and so they could trust him. Again, when the story happened, Eliezer was 100% certain that this was the right girl. He didn't have any need to ask her who she was up front. But when he's talking to the family, you got to portray yourself a little bit differently to the family to make the best possible impression, especially considering everything that was riding on the line with this. This is the future of the Jewish people. Eliezer needed to do this mission. He needed everything to work out perfectly, and therefore he was very exact in his words. So we see from here, a much deeper lesson is being taught to us by Rabbi Achan, Bereshis Rabbah. He's telling us that the words, the seemingly idle chatter of the servants of the house of Avram are more precious than the lessons of the Torah, we see what it's talking about over here, because if he said one wrong word, the whole Shidduch would have been in danger. The family could have called off the Shidduch if he got one step wrong. And he was so careful with how he measured every word that he said to make sure that he made the right impression, that he did his job properly, because it's a delicate matter when you're dealing with a Shidduch. The way you talk to people, the way you talk in general, of course, is very, very important. We have to be so careful with our words. So the Torah has plenty of room to teach us this lesson, to watch our words very, very carefully, especially when we're dealing with the Shidduch, where one wrong word or the tone of voice that you're using, or the impression that you're making can spoil a Shidduch and change a person's history and the destiny of the Jewish people. You got to watch your words very carefully. So the Torah spends a lot of time teaching us this lesson, and you want to learn the Jewish laws. Of course, that's also important, but for that, you'll work a little harder. This is a lesson the Torah really needs to drive home, and it's willing to spend 2 and 3 columns to teach that lesson. Let's go back now to sources 8 and 9, which is a similar idea. If you look through the story on your own, you'll find many, many examples of Eliezer changing some of the details. I want to bring out a couple that I found on my own and give everybody some homework to do, to go through the story carefully and find your own examples and try to think for yourself, how does it fit this lesson? Why did Eliezer feel a need to change this word, to change this detail? How was this important for making the right impression on the family? So here's a couple that I found on my own that I want to share with you. Source number 8, Vayomar Hashem Elokei Adoni Avraham. So this is Pasuk Yud Beis, when he is davening to Hashem, and he said, Hashem, the God of my master Avram, Hakre na lifanai hayom, make it happen now before me today. Va'aseh chesed im Adoni Avram, and do an act of kindness with my Lord Avraham. That's what he said. And when he's speaking to the family and he's recounting his prayer, he says as follows in Pasuk Mem Beis, verse 42. Va'avo hayom Elo'ayin, and I came today to the spring. Va'omar, and I said, Hashem Elokei Adoni Avram, Hashem, the God of my master Avram. So far, it's exactly the same. Here's where he changes. If you will make my way successful, that I am going on it, right? When it actually happened, he says, if you will do a chesed, an act of kindness for Avram. But when he's talking to the family, he says, if you will make me successful in my journey. Now, the outcome of both of these statements is exactly the same, but there's a little bit of a nuance that's different. Because if he told the family, I daven to Hashem to do an act of kindness, to do a chesed for Avram, what's the message that is sending? Avram's desperate. Can't find the Shidduch for his son. He's desperate. It's an act of kindness. Now, in truth, it really was a chesed. Every time for any person to find their spouse is a chesed, to help everybody, even if they have leverage, even if they have a lot of people who are standing in line to meet them, who would fall at their feet and love to marry them. It's still a chesed. To find the right person, the best possible person from the options that a person has, is certainly a chesed. But especially Avram, when he had such a limited pool of people to choose from, he was desperate. Yitzchak was certainly a prize. He was certainly a catch. There were many women that would have married him, but to fit the requirements to build the Jewish people, a very small pool of people to choose from. So when he's davening to Hashem, he's saying, do an act of chesed. But when you're speaking to the family, you got to be respectable, right? He's trying to sell them on the idea of sending back this girl with him. He can't say that we're sad sacks, we're desperate. Yitzchak can't find anybody to marry. Yitzchak is some loser. He had to portray it that Yitzchak's a great guy, comes from a great family. They're very wealthy. He's very well respected, etc. That he has options, that they should feel that he has options, and therefore raises his value in their eyes. So therefore, he doesn't mention the word chesed, but he says, if you will make me successful in my derech. It's just a small nuance. Here's the source number 9. Starts with Pasuk Yud Daled 14. This is the test. It should be the young woman that I will say to her. You'll see that if you're looking at the source sheet, you'll see that I underlined the parts where he changes. That I will say to her, lean forward your pitcher and I will drink from it. The Amra should say, and she will say, drink. I will ask her for some water, and she will say, sure, here, drink some. The Gam Gemalecha Ashka, and she will say, I will also give your camels to drink, meaning Eliezer is not going to ask her for water for the animals, just for himself. But if she on her own offers to not only give him water, but also for his animals, also, that is proof that you have singled her out for your servant, for Yitzchak. Uva Eda, and with that I will know, Ki Asisa Chesed Im Adoni. Again, I will know that you have done Chesed for my master. And there's many parts of this pasuk that I underline, because in pasuk Mem Gimel and Mem Daled 43 and 44 he makes several changes. This is him talking to the family again. He said, behold, and this is his recounting of his prayer to Hashem. He said, behold, I am standing by the fountain of water, by the spring of water. And it should be the Alma. In the actual events of the story, in the actual prayer he said, he called the girl a na'ara, and in talking to the family, he calls her an Alma. Now, one of the Mefarshim says the difference between a Nara and an Alma is language. It's just that the local dialect was different, and he thought that they didn't know the same language as him. Maybe on a pshat level that's true, but I like to believe that there's a deeper lesson here, although I don't really know the nuance between a Nara and an Alma. So think for yourself. Maybe you can do some research on your own and get back to me. I'll be very grateful if you're able to figure out why he may have changed from calling her a Nara to an Alma when he was talking to the family. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Okay, now he continues talking to the family. And it will be that the maiden that goes out to draw water, and I will say to her, give me now some water to drink, a little bit of water from your pitcher. Now, I don't have it here on the source sheet, but what he actually said to her when he met her was, he said to her, hagmi'ini mikadech. It's a very strange word. It's unclear what it means. In the Chumash of Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, he translates it as, give me some water to gulp. It seems to me he's asking her for a large amount of water. Let me gulp down some water, kind of a coarse way of talking. When he says to the family, he says, give me to drink a little bit of water, a much more polite and refined way of talking. So here, the reason why he deviates could be very, very clear. When he's talking to Rivka, he's giving her a test of characters. He's speaking a little bit more coarse, and he's asking for a great deal. Let me gulp down a lot of water. Here's a girl who's going to draw water from a well and then schlep the water home. It's difficult work, and he's not going to gulp water from the jug. He's asking a lot of her, and it's a kind of a coarse way of talking. So he didn't want to say to the family that that's how he spoke to her, even though when he tested her, he was testing her in that way. But again, when you speak to the family, you have to make more positive impression, especially when you're asking them to send the girl back with you to a distant land. Okay, so that's one thing that he changed. Pasuk Mem Daled, the Amra Elai. And he said to the family that his prayer was that she will say to me, Gam Atosha, say you also drink, Vigam lig malecha eshav, and I will also draw for your camels. That is the woman that Hashem has chosen for the son of my master. So what does he change? In the actual story, he says, Vigam gemalecha ashket, that she should offer to give the animals to drink. But when he's talking to the family, he says she only needs to offer to draw water for the animals, and then Eliezer would give them to drink. Just do me the favor of drawing the water, but don't give them to drink. Why would he make that change? Again, it seems perfectly logical, because if you're going to tell the family that I was expecting the girl to not only give me water to drink, and not only draw water for my animals, and camels drink a lot of water, so she's going to be going back to that well many, many times, schlepping that water, and also give them to drink. The family was, what are you crazy? You're asking some strange girl to feed and drink your animals. It's enough that she's drawing the water for your animals and giving it to you. Go feed your own animals. And again, they would say he's this guy is creepy, he's strange, and we're not going to send our daughter back with him. So therefore, he changed that detail of the story. And then the last change he made was again with the chesed. Right, and he davened to Hashem. He says that with this I will know that you've done chesed with my master. And when speaking to the family, he changes that to Asher ochiach Hashem levan Adoni, that you have simply shown as proof that this is the girl for the son of my master, but doesn't mention the chesed for the reason that I mentioned earlier, because he didn't want to portray himself and Avraham and Yitzchak as desperate, as I'm trying to get the word out. Okay, so that is the end of the main part of the shiur. With the few minutes that we have left, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. I want to speak a little bit in the time we have left over about the Shidduch world in general. And I've written a lot about this, as many of you should probably know by now. I used to be very actively involved in the Shidduch world. I started a grassroots campaign called End the Madness. The website is still there. It's dormant, but you can still see some of the work that I've done. And endthemadness.org. I wrote a book about the Shidduch world called End the Madness, Guide to the Shidduch World, and many dozens of articles about it. And I've done videos about it. So I've done a lot of work in this area. And even though I'm not so active in it now, I still care very much about the Shidduch world. And there's a lot that needs to change. And hopefully people will pick up on the ideas and the work that I've done and help bring positive changes to the Shidduch world. So I want to share a little bit more with you about that. Many years ago, when I was still a smicha student, I was in my early to mid 20s. I became very friendly with a rabbi who has since passed on. He was old at the time. I think he was in his 80s at the time, and he took a liking to me. This was shortly after I started End the Madness. I started that when I was 23. I think I was 25 or so when I met this rabbi, and he confided in me that back in the day, he was a very prominent rabbi in the young Israel movement, and he played a large role in stopping the mixed dances for singles that they had in the shuls of the young Israel, right? Back then, a lot of the Jews in the States were not really from, they were very maybe on the margins of being religious, and they would have been perfectly happy to marry a non-Jewish person. So in order to make it easier for them to meet Jewish people, if you didn't give them, sort of kosher dances, even though it's not kosher to have mixed dancing, but if you didn't give them that opportunity to meet, then they would have gone to balls and clubs, and they would have met non-Jewish women and married them. They would have been perfectly happy to do so. So they made this assessment. I'm certainly beyond my abilities to make such a judgment, but they judged at the time that it was worthwhile to give up a little bit in Jewish law to allow them the opportunity to have mixed dances, so hopefully they would meet and marry fellow Jews. Was it the right decision, the wrong decision? It's not really for me to say. But this rabbi told me that he played a large role in stopping these mixed dances. And he said that from a standpoint of Jewish law, he definitely did the right thing. However, he regretted to that very day, which was many years later, that when they stopped the mixed dances, they didn't provide to them an alternative, more kosher way of meeting. They stopped the mixed dances, but they didn't give them a different way to meet. There could have been Shabbos meals, it could have been lectures, it could have been programs, other ways without the mixed dancing. You didn't need to have mixed dancing, but give them an opportunity to meet. And he regretted to this day that when they stopped the mixed dancing, they didn't give them an alternative. And unfortunately today, the Jewish world, the Orthodox world has only gotten more and more strict as time has gone on. And while mixed dancing is certainly not something that I want to see brought back, but there are many truly kosher ways for singles to meet. They could meet at wedding meals. I've been a big proponent of that. It's criminal for single men and women to not be seated together at the wedding meals if the husbands and wives don't like each other, or they have their own concerns about being seated at mixed tables. That's their business. But the singles should certainly be seated together at the wedding meals. If the singles themselves are uncomfortable, that's their problem, and they're more than welcome to change their seats. But many singles would welcome that opportunity. It's a low pressure way for singles who have common friends. They probably have some similar backgrounds. They're dressed well. There's marriage in the air. Doesn't cost any money or take any extra effort to give them that opportunity to meet. It wouldn't solve all the problems, but it would definitely help some people to get married. And there's no reason to take it away from those people who would have the opportunity to get married. There are many other examples of that. I had a correspondence recently with a different rabbi who's been also trying to speak out a little bit about the Shidduch world, but he's careful. He doesn't want to ruffle too many feathers. I don't mind ruffling all the feathers. I trample on the feathers, but other people are more concerned and they want to play it a little safer. So he shared with me that he was talking to a different rabbi because he had recently spoken about the need to have more opportunities for people to meet without an intermediary, without a shadchan, just natural, normal ways for people to meet the way our parents and grandparents did. Again, it doesn't have to be mixed dancing, doesn't have to be violating Jewish law, but there are plenty of healthy, normal, kosher opportunities for singles to meet that we should bring back. And he brought up the example of Shabbos meals, right? You have a married couple that can have guests at their Shabbos table. There's no reason why they can't have single men and women as guests at their Shabbos table. And it's a relatively low pressure way for people to meet in a perfectly healthy, normal environment. The rule of thumb that I always gave is what makes an event a quality opportunity for singles to meet as opposed to a singles event, which is very awkward and full of pressure and rarely works for anybody. Just gives people more bad experiences and makes them more bitter and jaded, which is obviously not going to help people get married. So what makes a quality event better than a singles event is one simple test, that if the singles could look into a crystal ball and see that they would not meet somebody to date or marry at the event, would they still want to go? Because it's offering them something else, whether it's a lecture, whether it's a chesed opportunity, whether it's simply something that's fun. Okay, it's giving them an opportunity to do something that they really enjoy and want to be doing. And along the way, they have the opportunity to expand their social circles and meet people with common interests. Then that is a good event because it's not a singles event. It's something that they would want to be doing anyway. And even though they may well be going and looking around, seeing maybe there's somebody here for me to date and possibly marry, that's not the only reason, or even not necessarily the main reason why they're going. That drastically reduces the level of pressure. Whereas a singles event, any program that they're having is really a sham. The singles are only there to meet and marry, and any program that they're having, whether it's a lecture or some games that they're having, it's really just a sham. The pressure is going to be sky high, and therefore singles are going to be in their shidduch mode, their date mode, and it's not going to lead to marriages. It's going to lead to very awkward encounters, a lot of empty small talk while people are looking over their shoulder to see, why am I wasting time talking to this person? I really want to be talking to someone else. It's just full of pressure and it doesn't work. So we need to bring back natural meeting opportunities like a Shabbos meal, right? If singles know that they're not going to meet anybody to marry at the Shabbos meal, they may still want to go because they have to have a Shabbos meal. They're going to eat anyway on Shabbos. They might be friendly with the family. And it's an opportunity along the way to meet other people. So there's going to be much less pressure. It's a natural opportunity. And therefore, those are the kind of things that we should be bringing back. Now, so this rabbi who's been speaking out a little bit was speaking to a different rabbi. And this other rabbi challenged him and says, it may be worthwhile, but on the other hand, there's problems, because he gave an example. He says you have a young 21-year-old guy might use the opportunities of meeting girls for the wrong purposes. That was the words that he used. He might just want to play. He might just want to play around. He's not really serious about getting married. So this rabbi said, for a 26-year-old, somebody who's a little bit older who takes these events more seriously, maybe events of that nature would be a valid thing to do. But for somebody who's younger, who's 21, he might just be looking to have fun and wouldn't be looking to get married. So I told this rabbi, who's a friend of mine, to tell this rabbi, who we said is a very well-respected rabbi, that many thousands of singles are going to marry very late or not at all, because this rabbi feels it's his job to worry about preventing a 21-year-old adult who wants to fool around from fooling around, right? If somebody wants to fool around, he doesn't need your help to do it. He doesn't need your Shabbos meal or your wedding meal or your little game program, your shiur, your lecture. He doesn't need that to fool around. Today, it's very easy for people to fool around if they want to do so, right? The people who want to fool around, they're going to fool are going to fool around anyway, and they don't need to mix Shabbos meals to do it. So all he's really doing is exerting undue control over people and hurting the vast majority of people who are serious and do want to get married, and making them wait an extra 5 years or 10 years or even longer until they fall into the category of quote unquote older singles, where now we have to lighten up a little bit and give them an opportunity to meet. So we're turning the younger singles into older singles because we're making it almost impossible for them to meet somebody without a third party mixing in, right? Because we have this concern that if they meet people on their own, they might just have fun. Believe me, the Shidduch world is not fun. Dating is not fun. It should be fun. It should be fun in a kosher, healthy way, that we should be excited about the opportunity to meet people and get married. But believe me, the Orthodox world has sucked all the fun out of it. The first adjective that people use to describe the Shidduch world is never going to be fun. I promise you that. So we're so uptight about the possibility of a 21-year-old or somebody else fooling around that we're making it virtually impossible for thousands and thousands and thousands of singles to meet on their own. It's not a good bargain. So I told him that. I told this rabbi, this friend of mine, to tell this other guy that it's because of people like him that you have singles in their 30s and 40s and even older that almost never go out, that almost never really had a chance to get married, and they may well never get married. And if they do, it's going to be very late in life. So I say to tell this rabbi, thank you for preventing all of these people from fooling around when they were 21. Thank you very much for a job well done. These singles didn't fool around when they're 21, and now they're 31, 41, 51, 61, and they never got married. Thank you very much. And many of them are not even from anymore. They've left the Orthodox world, and they've started to fool around anyway, because eventually, if somebody doesn't get married, they're going to be tempted to do things that they shouldn't be doing. So the real question is, are you causing more harm than good, right? Sometimes a hands-off approach is best. And the fact of the matter is also that if somebody goes through the Orthodox world and the best schools and the best yeshivas for 20 plus years, and he's still going to an event looking to fool around, then what good is all the teaching that you did him? What good is all the education that you gave him if he can't even walk into a room with Orthodox Jewish women when he's old enough to get married, and the first thought of his mind is, I'm going to have some fun over here, that he's not serious about getting married. If that's the kind of people that you're churning out from your schools, then there's something much deeper wrong here than with the singles themselves. So I have a big problem with rabbis like that who have this ideology that it's their job to control singles in order to protect them, which necessitates making it virtually impossible for them to get married on their own. And instead of preventing people from fooling around and going off the proper path, they are in fact directly causing it far worse than would have happened without their quote protection and chumras. And I want to make one final point on this, and that is that many of the rabbis making these chumras and worrying about all the things that can possibly go wrong, if you lighten up a little bit, again, I'm not saying we should have mixed dancing ever, okay, but to lighten up a little bit, have mixed Shabbos meals, have mixed wedding meals, let singles meet a little bit on their own. They don't need somebody to hold their hand. These rabbis themselves are not going to the shadchan. They're not going to the, and if they are, they're not going to the same shadchan as you are. They're not getting the same treatment. These rabbis are VIPs. Okay, the prominent rabbis that are making all of these chumras, their sons are marrying the other one's daughters. They're marrying into a very select group of people with the best yichus, the most prominent titles, or very wealthy families. They don't have a hard time marrying off their children. Okay, so they're not going to the same shadchan as you are. They're not going through the same process as you are. So it's very easy for them to say, let's make things a little bit harder for them because we don't want people to fool around. These people are out of touch. They don't really care. They don't experience the same problems that everybody else is experiencing, and they're happy to let a shadchan handle everything. It's time to get back to what the Torah is really teaching us, and just as everybody in the Torah, except for Yitzchak, that we know of, every example that the Torah gives of a shidduch happening, except for Yitzchak, is people meeting on their own. And even the story with Yitzchak and Eliezer is by no means a model for the shidduch world that we have today. We need to really get back to what the Torah is teaching us. That yes, we don't want people to sin. We certainly don't want to make it easy for people to sin. And this is why the Torah gives us laws. The Torah teaches us what to do, and then it gives us a little bit of a hands-off approach and says, now I've given you the free choice, and I'm going to encourage you to do the right thing. I'm going to help you to do the right thing, but you are an adult, and now I trust you to do the right thing, even though I know some people are not going to do the right thing. But if you mess around too much with the system and you try to make it impossible for people to do the wrong thing, you're also making it impossible for people to do the right thing. And by extension, you're going to force and encourage more people to do the wrong thing because you made it impossible for them to get married. Okay, let me see if there's any questions over here. Comments. Okay, our understanding from a medrash as well, I believe that Rivka was only 3 years old at the time. Yitzchak is, of course, much older. It's unclear how old she was. There is such a source. But again, when you see a source like that, a lot of them are not speaking literally that she was actually literally 3 years old. A lot of saying that she was innocent, like a 3-year-old. I wouldn't take that at face value. But you are right that from that alone, we shouldn't take it as instruction to model everything that they did. Absolutely right. The ends do not justify the means when it comes to Judaism. That's definitely true. Although, again, you have to have a qualified posek who can sometimes know that it's an ace latzos. This isn't the job of every rabbi to do. It's not the job of me to do. I'm not qualified to do that. But there are times where we are a little bit lighter in some area because it's a very serious problem facing the Jewish people, and you have to take an emergency measure. Okay. I see some comments which are very good. Any questions? Yeah, it's better than having single males and females scroll through pictures and pictures online in pursuit of me. Yeah, I mean, it's not sneistic having pictures on the Shidduch profiles. I'm against Shidduch profiles completely. I've written a lot about that. But even worse than that, even the fact that you boil down singles to this nonsensical Shidduch profile, which really tells you nothing of substance about the person, to having the pictures that are being peddled around, we're turning it into a beauty contest, and the pictures are worthless anyway, because that picture is going to be the snapshot, that the very best moment of that person's life. You know, the perfect angle, the perfect lighting, the perfect editing software in many cases, right? That's not how the person looks in real life. So most of the time, you're meeting somebody, you're meeting a real person. They may look much lesser than they did in the picture, and even if they're still very, very attractive in real life, but if you have this image of the picture in your mind, to use a crude number system, you may have been expecting a 10 and you wind up meeting an 8, you'll see that person is actually a 2 because you were expecting a 10. So the pictures are also causing more harm than good. Again, physical attraction is very important, but the pictures are not the way to go. I'm very, very against that. I actually wrote a Dvar Torah about this. It's on my website. Maybe in the recording, I'll have a link to it. I have a source from the Or HaChaim that they didn't have pictures back then, but he was very much against this type of thing where you're sort of showing off a person's beauty before even matching them up. It's very, 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 very much against Torah. And again, the way we do things today, you see the rabbis in general, many of them are Erev Rav, many of them are incompetent, and the good ones often lack the courage to speak the truth. So just as the rabbis have gotten everything wrong about COVID and the masks and the shots and many, many other things, they got everything wrong about the Shidduch world also. Again, the Torah is very clear about this. I've done a lot of work. I've shared a lot of Torah about this. And again, you have to use a little bit of seichel. I mean, if it doesn't make sense, it's probably not the right thing to do. The Torah is not asking you to do things that are painful and harmful and embarrassing and shameful in order to get married. That is not the price that you have to pay in order to get married. And everything about the Shidduch world is the grading and harmful, and it just sucks the life out of people. So there needs to be massive changes. But the positive aspect of it is it's not that hard to do. We change a little bit here and there, just make a few small changes to it. They will be massive changes, but it's not a lot of work. There just has to be people willing to do it. People have to have enough courage to say, even though some people are going to give me a dirty look, and maybe they're not going to marry me or my children because I'm not playing the game. You don't want to marry them and their children anyway. They're not really right for you. You have to have courage to do the right thing and put your trust in Hashem, as we learned from the Ramban. Do what is expected of you, do what's right for you, and then leave the rest to Hashem. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to play a game. You don't have to be part of a system in order to get married. Just do the right thing, do what the Torah teaches, and then trust in Hashem, and he will do what is right in his eyes. Okay, thank you everybody for joining the class. Thank you, Lowell, for putting it together, and we'll see you next week with the next Torah class.